Look who's in the house today. Somebody who knows a little bit about triathlon. Just a little. Mr. Triathlon Taren. Taren, how are you?
I am phenomenal, Hugo. Thanks for having me here, buddy.
Thank you for being on the show. We were talking about, you said that this is your first time in Boulder and Colorado as well?
This is, besides connecting to a flight in Denver and having to stay overnight once about 2 months ago, this is the first time that I've spent any length of time in Colorado, period. And
awesome.
It is nice here. However, the altitude is kicking my ass.
Yeah. I was going to ask you first impressions. Okay, we're definitely going to talk about the altitude. But, yeah, first impressions, being here in the bubble.
First impressions are that this place is like an adult fantasy camp. It is amazing here. You know what? When I walked out Monday morning, I flew in Sunday night, and I walked out Monday morning, and I look around, and I'm like, is it a holiday here? Because everyone was just so relaxed, and it's like the largest vacation town that I've ever been to. Everyone's just so mellow, but at the same time, so active. Like you go past Monday night, a whole bunch of baseball fields, and there were a bunch of 20 and 30-something-year-olds playing soccer baseball and dogs chained up watching, and I hung out with the dogs and watched soccer baseball for a couple of minutes. And that doesn't happen where I'm from in Winnipeg. So it's amazing to see that somewhere in the world, there's an entire city based around kind of like relaxation, overall wellness and activities. I love it here. This is great.
Yeah. I remember one of my, when we first moved here, one of my welcome to Boulder experiences was went to Whole Foods to get some groceries. And, of course, I didn't bring my tote bag. I didn't bring my own bag. So I'm there shopping, doing my thing, and I just grab as many plastic bags as I can, to put my vegetables and groceries and all those things. So when I went checkout, I just got this look like, no, we don't do this here. So I thought it was funny. And another fun memory I think I have when I first moved here is that a lot of people, it can be a Tuesday morning, Tuesday night, 10 in the morning when everybody else is working, and no, people are, you see them at coffee shops, but they're still working, and they dress super casually. But it was one of those things like, oh, this is the city of where tons of startups, working culture is different and things like that. But nice. I'm glad that you're here. So you're going to be here for the next, 4 or 5 days? I'm
here until August 6th, and today is the 1st, so still another few days. Came here for not to race the half Ironman in Boulder, but just to cover it. And where I'm from in Winnipeg, there's zero triathlon industry, so about once a month I make sure that I get to a race or a conference or just get out of Winnipeg and meet some people, because I'm still so new in the industry. Like I've got to meet everyone and figure out where my place is in this world, and that doesn't happen over email or Skype. That happens like face to face and hanging out here at Rally Sport and being around the expo and things like that. So yeah, be around for another 5 days.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. I think I saw one of your videos where you said you're not racing. I figured you're gonna do all things Triathlon Taren stuff. So interviewing people, doing some podcasting, I guess.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, I think a total of 5 podcasts or so we've got lined up. Now 6 with yours. Oh, stop. Yeah, a lot of that. Meeting with a few people that we're talking about, like, are there ways to partner up in any way, shape, or form? Just saying hi to a few people that we've traded emails with but haven't actually made connections with face-to-face. So, yeah, just kind of lots of being around.
So crazy. Like, this place is unreal. I was just thinking about 2 things triathlon related that happened to me when I first moved. One was, so I went to I used to go to another gym here. What is it called? Flatirons. And go to the pool, and I'm waiting for this gentleman. He's swimming towards me, and I was about to ask him if I could join if we could share the lane. And so when I see the guy, Andreas Ray alert. Okay, and I think back then he had just finished second. I think he finished second once at the Hawaiian Ironman, and I was like, "Can I share the lane with you?" Because I'm such a tri geek. Every time I see my big heroes of the sport, I have no issue approaching them and saying, "Hey, it's you!" Like when I interviewed Nicole de Boom maybe a couple weeks ago, I told her how I met her husband, Tim. And it was kind of funny / creepy for Tim because it was here in the locker rooms at rallies. And I see Tim and I'm like, dude, it's you. And I asked him for a selfie. And so we had a selfie taken and not creepy at all. Not a stalker at all.
You did the selfie in the locker room?
Yeah, and Nicole was like, were you guys naked? No. I wouldn't take it to that point. But and then another anecdote that I have, it's again incredible. I'm coming back from a long ride. I'm tired, I'm just cranky. I'm happy, but I'm done with my ride. All of a sudden I see this guy coming out from this street, whatever, Ferris Alsultan.
Did he have the Speedo on? I hope he had the Speedo on.
Well, not really, but he was wearing, I think he was wearing his Aero helmet, and that's one of the reasons why I recognized the guys. Like, and again, I'm like, oh my God, this is so awesome. Anyway,
Just throw a rock and you'll hit a pro triathlete in Boulder.
So, Canada, man, Winnipeg.
Yes.
So, are you grew up there or
100% born and raised?
Okay.
Born in the Concordia Hospital in North Kildonan, and I grew up about 2 kilometers, as in we will do this in American units. It is about a mile.
We do
little bit less than a mile and a half away. Grew up that far away.
Yeah.
And then we really moved out of town, and then I moved about 8 kilometers away from where I was born, and now we're about 15 kilometers away from where I was born.
Yeah.
And that's probably about as far as we'll get. I don't know if I'll ever be able to convince my wife, No Triathlon Kim, as she's known on my YouTube channel.
Of course.
Because she does not do triathlon. Her name is Kim. We're very original. She's very married to the town. She's got a lot of family that she's close with there. But the more I spend time in the triathlon industry, the more I think I might be able to, maybe get her to a place like Boulder for a couple of months a year, or maybe a Tucson for a couple of months a year, and of course Kona. And
I love that.
So Winnipeg is a home base,
yeah,
but kind of like some satellite homes might be in the future. That's dreaming.
Yeah,
that would be really nice. But yeah, like I say, to get out of there a little bit every month is kind of nice, especially in the winter.
So what is the most popular triathlon city or town in Canada? Is it?
That's tough to say. I'd probably go with Victoria.
Yeah,
I think there are a lot of really top-notch pro triathletes that came out of Victoria. We've got a national triathlon center out of Victoria, and Simon Whitfield trained out of there. I want to say Paula Findlay came out of there, and then has gradually come to California, and then Boulder, and Montreal's Mont Tremblant, really big race town. We've got an awesome race there.
Yeah, Ironman.
But we don't have any like real endurance meccas. Penticton was. A lot of people that were triathletes in the 80s and the 90s that raced in the Ironman Canada will actually, some of them have gone and moved from Winnipeg to Penticton.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really nice. A lot of people will still go do a spring camp in Penticton.
Yeah.
Because there's really nice riding there. But we don't have a place that, say, if you're a runner or a cyclist or anything like that, that you just go to that town in Boulder, Canada.
San Diego.
No, exactly. There's nothing really like that.
Interesting. I'm a huge fan of Peter Reed. Like, I think I started doing triathlons when he was, I guess winning Kona. So yeah, awesome. So many great athletes from Canada. Let's talk about Triathlon Taren before there was Triathlon Taren. Before it was just Taren. Talk about growing up. Let me ask you this: if I say, what is a happy, memorable memory from when you were a kid? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Building forts.
Okay.
Building forts in a very first, you said first thing.
Yeah.
Building forts in a park that was about 6 houses away from where I grew up.
Uh-huh.
It was 383 Foxdale. It's going to end up being like Triathlon Graceland. People are going to go to Winnipeg and look up 383 Foxdale. And when I was, up until I was 12, we lived there. And it was this giant park that kind of circled all of of a certain area of the town.
Yeah.
So let's say to run from one end to the other, it might be a 20 or 30 minute run. And you're kind of meandering through different areas of residential. And it was along this creek called Buns Creek Park.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember every summer we would be building forts, or we built a raft that we floated a grand total of 20 feet and then went, you know what, this really isn't working, and we should beach it. So then we beached it and then never saw the raft again and never built another one. But it was a lot of that, like until I was 12 years old. There was a lot of outdoor time in the summer. It was either 100% outdoors doing stuff like that, or inside playing Nintendo. But the Nintendo got
what
got fairly
Nintendo?
boring.
Like the first
the
one?
original, the ON, the original Nintendo.
You see, like I've never been into video games, but I always liked the original Nintendo because the games used to be so simple and easy to play. You know, you had Duck Hunt. All you have to do is just grab the gun and just shoot the gun. Or Mario Brothers.
Mario Brothers 3. Holy smokes, that was an entire summer of my life. Contra.
Yeah.
Galaga.
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Oh yeah, that was a good one.
And or like games from Atari, right? Those, I don't know. I used to enjoy like games like Pac-Man, simple stuff, because I remember when the next Nintendo came out, all these games were much more complicated. They would come with this thick guides of, you know, for you to study how to play, and I would be like, that's when it lost me. It was like, I'm done. But so I see. And did you used to, when you were a kid, besides building forts? Did you used to? Were you active? I mean, what kind of sport were you into?
No, not at all. When I was 9, I took up curling. And curling is actually, a lot of people in the U.S. will now know about it because you guys are the reigning Olympic gold medalists. And funny story, those guys that won that gold medal in the last Olympics, they're good friends of mine. Like I curled against them dozens of times and traveled with them.
You used to be. I mean, you used to play professionally or elite? Gotcha.
Yeah, professionally. As much as you can call curling professional, it's kind of like triathlon, where we were one of the top-ranked teams in the world. We got as high as about 15th in the world. But in the year that we were ranked 15th in the world, I made a grand total of $2,000.
Wow.
And still had to work on the side. And that was about as high as I got, and I was late 20s. I want to say something like 27, 28 at the time. And I'd been doing that since I was 9 years old, and gradually got better and better, and would win some tournaments here and there. Started playing on the World Curling Tour and Grand Slam events, which is like the curling version of the Masters.
Nice.
and the US Open, and we go and I'd play charity bonspiels where people would raise money to get to curl with me, and then they'd realize that I was not that good, and they'd be like, oh, I want my money back. But like I got to the point of basically saying, all right, to get any better, I think it's a point that a lot of pro triathletes get to. I would have had to quit my job and dedicate my entire life to curling.
Right.
And I wasn't enjoying it that much, because at that level where it's your job, the pressure was enormous, and it took a lot of the fun out of it. Like literally whether you could pay the bills or not was dependent on whether or not you won, how far you made it in the tournament over the weekend. And then you would come home and you would do laundry and maybe practice and maybe work out for a couple days, and then you'd be on the road again. And I basically got to that point where it was one or the other. I was either going to have to commit more, or I would have to give it up. And I gave it up and played another couple of years kind of on, call it the second tier rank, not at that top tier, just kind of dropped down. And at that point, it was like, why am I still doing this? Because I'm not progressing anymore. It was still like you're taking a lot of time out for it, but you were playing bonspiels. Bonspiels are what a curling tournament is. And you still wanted to do well because those competitive juices would flow. But because you weren't as dedicated to it before, you weren't playing as well. Like there were just a lot of reasons that I was like, you know what, it just doesn't get the adrenaline going anymore. And I gave it up. Cold turkey. Haven't thrown a stone in 3 years now. And I don't miss it. It's strange. I really thought that I would miss it a lot.
Yeah.
But anyone that has given up curling, I talk to them a lot leading into that decision. People that are multiple time world champions, they said don't miss it one bit. And I was surprised that I felt the same way. So it was around that time that I started taking triathlon a lot more seriously.
We're going to talk about triathlon, but first I want to talk about skateboarding. But before that, see, I've done my research.
You have? Holy smokes.
You just reminded me of Erin Carson, which, by the way, we are doing this interview at Rally Sports. Thanks, Erin. I don't know if I said that already, but when I interviewed her, she grew up being a very, very competitive basketball player, professional. I think she also lived in Canada for a while.
She was on the Canadian national team.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I saying? And anyway, but then she, I think, quit playing professionally, and then she started coaching, and she she reached a point where she was not enjoying that anymore. There was not only the training, but like the traveling and the recruiting. It was very, very intense, so she was not enjoying that path, and so she basically stopped that and started a new journey. But I hear you, man. Like, it's funny because I don't know if it's the same, not the same, but I think about with me, like when I first came to the U.S. and started working for big companies, I thought that was a path that I wanted to do, and then I realized that this is not something that really makes me feel, I don't know, like fulfilled. But anyway, let's go back to talk about skateboarding. So
I was much less good at skateboarding.
half pipe or street?
Street.
Why?
Because I wasn't good on a half pipe.
Dude, that's exactly me.
I could drop in and I could stall, and that was about it.
Yeah,
on a half pipe.
Couldn't agree more. I wanted to be a ramp skater, and then I went to this big half pipe once, went all the way to the top, tried to come down, thinking in my mind, this is what I'm supposed to do to make it and do all these aerials and things like that. I fell, of course, big time. I went back up and tried to do the same thing a second time. I failed again. I was like, a third time. Let's do a third time. Did it again. Fell again. And I realized this is not my thing. I was just too heavy. I was not flexible enough to be able to do all these crazy maneuvers that all these amazing people used to. But street was awesome. So any favorite skateboarder guy that used to follow?
Oh, back in the day, it was Jamie Thomas. I used to love Zero skateboards, the Zero skateboard videos. That was it. Like, that was the most pumped up that I would get about skateboarding. I watched these Zero skateboard videos with like Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden music, and they always had both the good and the bad, like these huge rails and stairs that they would jump, but then they had these montages of fail montages, and that was more impressive to me. Like, that got me jacked up. And that was, believe it or not, that was actually the first bunch of videos that I ever made. I was never good enough to get sponsored, but a bunch of my friends, as we were growing up and we were 16 or so, I had a car and I had a camera.
Nice.
So I was always the guy that they would be like, hey, Taren will like take us skateboarding, and he'll bring a camera and he can make our sponsor me video. And those were the first videos that I ever made when I was about 16, because I was the only guy with a car and a camera.
What kind of software do you use to edit the videos?
It was called 2 VCRs.
Oh, wow.
Going from one tape to the other.
Okay.
And hitting pause and stop at the exact right time and trying to cut it that way.
Oh, you just reminded me of making music tapes. There was something.
Exactly. It was like that. Yeah.
And what kind of camera do you used to use?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I remember it was an RCA, and I somehow got hold of a fisheye, like a broken fisheye lens. It was just the fisheye part of it, the lens. Yeah. And there was an attachment that was loose in the bag, and I super glued that fisheye lens onto the attachment, screwed it on, and made my own free fisheye lens. Nice. So that we could skate around. And if anyone watches skate videos, they're all on this big fisheye lens.
Right.
So we didn't actually have a fisheye lens, which costs hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. We had a free ghetto fisheye lens and 2 VCRs.
That's awesome. So that is the origin of Taren making videos. That's hilarious. I love it. So triathlon, how did you start into that journey?
I was in my well, we'll take it back just really quickly that in my early 20s I was really out of shape. I was about 215 pounds. I was drinking a lot, as all good curlers do. You party a lot. In my case, it got to a point that it was extremely unhealthy. 215 pounds on a 5'8" frame. It's not a good look. And while I never really got, say, self-destructive about it, I certainly didn't like myself when I would drink really hard 2, 3, 4 times a week throughout university. And I decided in my early to mid 20s that enough was enough. And I just decided, I literally remember the day that I left a bar, and the very next day I started working out a lot more seriously. And I went gradually from 215 pounds down to about 190, and then brought it down to about 175. And over the course of about 5-6 years, I lost a fair bit of weight, got it down to that 175. But it was because I was bodybuilding. Like I thought I was that I didn't come from a fit family, and all I knew was that at university there was a gym. So I went to a gym, and I just looked at what everyone else was doing. They were lifting weights and taking protein shakes. So I got obsessed about that and spent a lot of time on bodybuilding.com. But it wasn't very fun because nobody talks to each other and there's no real culture. You just go and you listen to your iPod and grunt and try to look pretty in the mirror. And at some point in my later 20s, I would have been 25, 26 or so, I got hurt trying to do a big bench press, hurt my shoulder, and I couldn't really do anything. So I started walking on the treadmill, and that got boring as all hell. So then the next day I would switch that up with biking. And then after a little while, I was like, wow, that's really boring, just walking on a treadmill and biking on a stationary bike. And, oh, well, there's a pool over there. So I went and I tried to swim in the pool. And then I remembered that there was a friend that I went to university with who was an elite under 21 triathlete. And I thought, you know what? I remember Jacques used to do triathlons. I wonder if he was any good and if he could help me out. So I called him and I said, how do you do a triathlon? And he's a really blunt guy. And he just said, well, and then you do it. And then you've done a triathlon. And that was basically how it started. I trained for a Triathlete, which was a 300-meter swim, a 13K bike, and a 3K run. So we're talking, what would it be? Like less than 8 miles. Less than 8 miles and less than a 2-mile run. And that is still probably one of the most painful triathlons I've ever done, even though I trained for it for, I think, 9 months. I was so scared of it. And that would have been about 9-10 years ago. I know my timelines and math is totally not adding up here, but I'm within like 4 years one way or another. But I know it was 10 years ago because this is my 10th season in triathlon, and that was how it all started. I got that feeling of adrenaline and excitement that you never really feel day to day as a grown up. Like you go to work and the amount of excitement that you get if your body gets any sort of adrenaline responses when you're stuck in traffic and you're pissed off. But I went to this race and all of a sudden I got butterflies again before the gun goes off, and there's people beside me that I'm trying to swim around, and I'm racing for time, and there's, I don't know if that person is in front of me is even in my wave, but I'm going to try to catch them. Like all these things that are feelings of accomplishment and excitement that you never feel day to day. What was all satisfied instantly with that race that only took 40 minutes.
Right. So, so you started running, walking on the treadmill, cycling, and swimming. I think I read this, and correct me if I'm wrong. You had a hard time to, like, you didn't used to swim, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So
I was afraid of the water.
You were afraid of that. So how did it all start?
Very first swim I did was 14 lengths. Not even laps. So it works out to, and it was a 25-yard pool.
Did you take lessons or?
Nothing. No, just showed up, just walked over to the pool one day. So that works out to 350 yards, and it took me an hour to do. And I was burping chlorine for literally 3 days. I could not get the smell of chlorine out of my nose.
Freestyle or?
If you can even call it that.
Or at least.
I was trying to do freestyle.
Okay.
And that was how the very first swim started, I was like, oh my God, this is a lot harder than I remember it as a kid, because I'd gone to Don't Drown level 1, Don't Drown level 2 as a kid. But something clicked in me maybe when I was around 10 or 12 that I just became afraid of the water. Even in our backyard pool that we had growing up, I would do a cannonball and then I'd rush over to the side. If I would go tubing at the lake, I'd want a life jacket, not because I was afraid of drowning, but what if a fish comes and bites me? Like I was just afraid of the water. And I don't know why I kept going. I just kind of kept going because doing the triathlon was more important than giving into the fear. So I just kept going, kept swimming for up until now.
So did you start swimming by yourself?
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing. Because out of the 3 disciplines, I don't know, like swimming is one of those sports where you need help, right? Like one time I went with my wife to the pool because she wanted to try something different than just running or cycling. She doesn't do triathlons. She does not run at all. She likes cycling, but she wanted to try something different. And she doesn't swim. She can float, do things, and she just got bored because she didn't know how to move forward, right? And I don't know if I could do it myself. When I learned to swim when I was a kid, it was one of those, like, you're a kid, you go to summer, take summer lessons, and I did that for a couple of years, and then I stopped. But I remember when I first decided that I was going to do triathlons, I clearly remember going back to the pool, knowing how to swim, but I remember finishing 25 yards, and I was so tired. Like, I could not keep going. I was like, oh, my God. And the funny thing is that, at least for me, when I first started doing triathlons, I knew that I wanted to do an Ironman race at some point. Funny thing is that every time I would think about the distances, I would be like, I've run a marathon before, but I've never biked that long. I've never swam that long. So, but it's interesting that even though you're not ready, to do the whole distance, at least the desire is there, right? Or at least that curiosity is like, well, what if, maybe if I keep trying, I could get better. And the same thing with biking. And so, wow, cool. And so that was your first race. And did you first start doing shorter races like sprints and Olympics, and then you moved up to half Ironmans? Or?
That first year I did the try,
okay,
and then I did a sprint, and then I did an Olympic. And when I did that Olympic, it was a real big eye opener. I suffered through it immensely. I think I did a 257, and it was probably the hardest course that we have locally. Lots of hills, lots of trail, and I really did not feel good. And after I did that, I did the same thing the next year. I kind of kicked around both sprint and Olympic, and it was about the third year that I decided, you know what, I can do okay at sprint, and I can at least kind of control how I feel, and there were some things that I could pinpoint that I could get better at in sprint. Olympic, there were just so many variables, so many things went wrong, and I felt so bad that I was like, all right, I know that if I do better at sprint, I can probably translate that to Olympic. So I concentrated on sprint from my third year up until probably my 6th year, and gradually got from I think my first sprint was somewhere around a 123 or 126, and got it down to about a 107 high, like a 107.53, I think it was, if I remember right. And at that point, I had accomplished what I thought I could. I was like, okay, I've got a better handle on my body, because I hadn't been throwing so many variables at it with a longer distance, that I knew more about how I could train without injuring myself, how much I could train, the type of training that did or didn't work. I just had a better handle on it, because I nipped out like probably 80% of the variables that come with an Ironman. Like a sprint, the gun goes off and you just go. Like you literally just go and try not to blow up. And like, what nutrition do you take? Like nothing.
Yeah.
Like how hard do you go? You just go hard.
Yeah. Socks. Forget about socks.
Yeah, socks. Why do you need socks? Yeah, like you just went. But it allowed me to understand my body more, and I've taken a lot of those same principles, and they still apply in Olympic, and then they still apply in half Ironman. And it's getting at half Ironman, it's a fair bit more logistically complicated, and there's a lot more variables, and at Ironman even more, but it's still a lot of those same principles that I used in sprint training.
It's interesting because one of the things that I think I saw a video where you talk about, I think people asking you, when are you going to do full Ironman? When are you going to do full Ironman?
I get asked that all the time.
And he gave me the impression that you first want to focus on doing one specific format or distance, do it really well, be really good at it before moving to the next, distance or format. And that's why, you first started doing sprints, Olympics, halves, because dude, you're like really good. Like what's your best half Ironman? Your PR? You use 4 hours.
4:41.
That's amazing. Because mine is like 5:30.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I think about what you were just saying about focusing on trying to make a better time and be really competitive. For me, it's always been more like finishing. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I like longer distances, because I don't necessarily go for speed. Yeah, it would be nice to be super fast, but I go more for like the distance. It's like, okay, I just want to finish whatever, the race, or, instead of thinking I want to do this under, X hours or things like that. But it's so interesting how we're all different.
Yeah, and I catch a lot of flack online because I suggest that people ease into longer sports. Like, if there's one thing that I really get slammed about, and in one case it was really publicly on a public, or not a public, but a private but huge Facebook group. I was ripped apart because I said something about how I feel bad for people that step up to the distance of Ironman too early. And my knowledge of it, and this is straight from Ironman, they say that their churn rate is 40%. People that come in, do their first Ironman, and never come back to the sport the next year.
Just want to check it out from their whatever list.
And that's fine if that's what people want to do. If they literally just want to check the bucket list and then never come back, that's okay. But what the Ironman stats show is that 40% of the people come and go, and more often than not, it's because they've become injured. And there's the saying, and this is what they say. It's because they've had a bad experience. They might have got injured, and they really suffered through that event and didn't enjoy it. And this is what they've said is a challenge. And I look at it and I'm like, there's a huge amount of people that say they're doing an Ironman in one of their first several races. And because I'm so passionate about triathlon, and I see the life changes that it allows people to have for the rest of their lives, with confidence and with health and with relationships and with their close friends, I don't want people to bounce off. I want them to be in the sport for forever.
Of course.
And it does make me sad to see that there's 40% of the people that go into Ironman and bounce out don't get those benefits, because what the stats show is they haven't built up to it properly. Now, if they want to just come in and check off the bucket list, more power to them. I'm cool with that. Like, everyone does whatever they want. It's not for me.
Yeah.
When I go into a distance, I want to feel more in control of that distance than it is of me. And I know that there's a learning curve with every distance. It took me 4 cracks at the half Ironman to actually feel like I was in control of the race. But I get my jollies out of that feeling of speed. And I want to feel like I'm racing a race, not finishing it. Like, I want to see if I can. I liken it back to when you'd watch those old strongman competitions, and somebody would hold out an anvil and their arms were shaking. Yeah. And that's how I think about like holding speed. Like, just hold it, just hold it, just hold it, don't break. And I want to see how far and how fast I can go. And that's just me.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. And I get why people go in so quickly. It's just not my jam.
But I agree with you. Like, for instance, I think about years, recently, a lot of people not only getting injured, but people dying, in the swim, getting all kinds of heart attacks and strokes, and and I don't know anything about that, but it makes me think that, I don't know, maybe people, like you're saying, jumping into the distance a little too soon, not maybe training enough, or I don't know. Sometimes I see when people come from sea level to altitude, like I would never do that. But it's really popular. A lot of people do Boulder, the half Ironman, the full, and I'm like, I would never ever come, all the way up to 6,700 feet or 7,000 feet to race, because you go slow and it's hard, but it's a nice venue, but
it's very pretty, but yeah, your rate of perceived exertion is through the roof.
Yeah, I know. I know what I mean. So talk about the origins of Triathlon Taren. Like, what made you think about starting that? I mean, what did you used to do before doing this? I assume that you're doing this full time now.
I am. We still do a little bit of social media consulting on the side. We're getting close to being able to do Triathlon Taren full time. Working on it. We're getting there. I was, as of 3.5 years ago, I was Taren Gesell, CIM, Chartered Investment Manager, Certified Financial Planner, and Fellow of the Canadian Securities Institute. I was a financial investment advisor.
Okay.
And you know what? I think back to even when I was studying for the licensing exam, just to get into the industry, just to get my first job, I remember reading the tests and going, "This is crap. This is a crap industry. It's just not good." But everyone must feel this way. Everyone must have a time that they just have to suck it up and get a job that they don't like. And I suppose this is mine, because I'm good with numbers and I understand the stock market and how to plan for things financially. So I got into it, and I was aggressively average at it. I was not great. I built up a small little practice, had somewhere around 60 or 70 families that I worked with, but I wasn't making it rain ever, because I think people smelled on me when I would walk in that I wasn't really buying what I was selling.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. Right around the beginning of the 5th year that I was doing it, I realized that I didn't want to do it for the rest of my life. Even the people that were making gazillions of dollars at it, I'd look at them and I'd be like, even if I got there, would I really want to be there? And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've never really talked about this a whole lot, but I just wanted to change. So I decided I was going to start applying to MBA programs. And because I was a Canadian, I was a little bit older, I didn't have a very good career trajectory. I had a lot of extracurriculars and things that I had won awards at here and there, but I wasn't like performing brain surgery on the side, as a lot of, say, Harvard MBAs and Stanford MBAs do. Like, they are the most overachievers imaginable. So at the time, I thought, I got to pad my stats somehow. All right, I'll create a YouTube channel or a website. Originally, it was a website.
Nice.
And I thought about, what is it going to be? What's it going to be? Well, might as well do it about something that I enjoy. And I thought to when I was happiest, and it was on the Tuesday and Thursday morning group road bike rides that I went on every single time a Tuesday and Thursday came around throughout the summer. And I started making videos about, originally it was gels and how to take gels, what gels were good, what gels I didn't like. That was how it all started. And leading into actually submitting my applications to 5 schools, I want to say it was, I started cranking out videos like crazy, because I'm like, oh man, I got to get a whole bunch of views so I can show them that I'm interested in something and I can work hard. And through that process, I was like, oh, I actually I like making these videos. And when I got turned down from every single school, because I shot for the moon. Like, I went Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Wharton. I went right for the tippy top of it and was just asking to be turned down. And when I got those turned down letters, I was actually thankful, because even after submitting those applications, I kept making videos, and I was like, oh, what if I got in? Would I be able to keep making these videos? I probably won't. And then I'll have to go back to school, and then I'm just more into finance. So that was how it all started.
So did that rejection from school, was that like an incentive for you to just keep making more videos, or is it just because you really realized, I'm enjoying making these videos?
I had enjoyed it even before I sent the applications away,
Yeah.
and realized I was going to keep doing that to have a creative outlet.
Yeah.
As adults, we don't have a ton of creative outlets, and if you're somebody that
That's
needs
true.
one and wants one, we don't get that in a lot of instances unless you make it for yourself. And I learned about myself through that process that I need a creative outlet and something that I can look at very frequently and say, I made that. And every time I hit upload, I was like, I was happy about, even though the videos back then were really, really bad, it was always fun to try something a little bit new and a little bit different editing technique, and maybe I'd buy a different light and see how it worked. And even though even before those turn downs came, I knew I was just going to keep making videos.
Did you start editing with iMovie or?
Yeah, I edited my very first few videos on my wife's iPhone with iMovie.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, swiping my finger. Actually, I don't remember if the very first video or not even had cuts, like jump cuts. I don't think I even knew how to make jump cuts at that point. But doing the swipe finger to make a jump cut.
Yeah. And your first videos were like focused on nutrition. Is that right? Yeah. You used to do like product reviews on I remember. And then you would also do some reviews on I don't know, like shoes and gear and things like that. How did how did that evolve into Triathlon Taren? Like, when did you realize, I'm going to start putting out content related with all things, relevant for the triathlon community?
Eventually, I ended up leaving my role as a financial advisor. I sold my practice to a colleague because I had an opportunity to take over the social media division for a friend's company and start building it up. And because I hadn't been a social media professional, I kept doing the triathlon videos on the side because it was like this little bit of R&D that, like, if I was going to manage a social media division, I better know social media pretty good.
Right. And
I wasn't going to try and test things on this buddy's platform, which was some of the biggest tech publishing websites in the world, iMore, Android Central, Windows Central, Crackberry. We're the family of websites, and altogether they've got like 4 or 5 million social media followers and 100 million page views a month. So I wasn't going to go and start testing things on their channel. So I kept doing the triathlon stuff on the side, and they were totally cool with that. I'd come in on the weekends and I would edit videos, and I was managing a team of video producers. So to manage people who do videos, I had to get better at doing videos. So I would teach myself more stuff on the weekend. And eventually we ended up kind of changing that structure. Instead of working in that company, I bought the division that we were working for, and that company became our first client, and we still kept working for them. And I was still doing Triathlon Taren and using it as still just R&D. And one of the things that I wanted to research was, what if I changed it to a daily video, a daily vlog, instead of twice a week? And that was when it really exploded. So I didn't do it with the intention of turning it into our living and something that I'm trying to do for a living and full time and with employees that work on it. But I just wanted to see what the change would be if we changed it to a daily vlog. And instantly, I think at the time we had, I want to say something like 6,000 or 8,000 followers. And within a 6-week period, it had grown to 10,000. And all of a sudden, when I would go to a race, people would recognize me. And the messages that I would get, instead of people commenting saying, oh, this shoe review was helpful, thank you. Or, oh, this tip was helpful, thank you. The messages that I got were a lot different. They were more about how me just sharing my daily triathlon journeys was inspiring.
Right.
And that was like, oh, that's not transactional. That's heartwarming. Like if I can help be a part of somebody having a little bit more motivation to do whatever it is in their life that I remembered struggling with as I was getting out of being unhealthy and losing weight or getting out of a job that I didn't like. I remember how I needed motivation to do that. And if I could be a part of helping provide it for somebody else, like, oh my God, like this is life's calling stuff. Like this is really good, feel good stuff. And that was February 1st, 2017, I want to say, that we changed it to a daily video, and we haven't missed a day since.
That's amazing. What motivated you to do the daily videos? Was it I don't know, do you follow Casey Neistat, or because I'm a big fan of his, and he would just do all these daily videos, and that became like my, I need to watch this video, you know, at the end of the day, that will be my like TV, you know. It was so entertaining, or I don't know, I'm just curious.
It was, but it wasn't, that wasn't the motivation for it. That was kind of what just exposed me to the idea of a daily video.
Right.
The motivation to do it was literally, I was researching people that had changed from uploading frequency of once or twice a week to daily.
Right.
And they had significant upticks. One was a guy named John Olson.
Yeah.
A snowboarder or skier. One was Sean Duras, and they changed their upload frequency to daily, and they saw a very big spike instantly. So I was like, man, I don't know. We got some time right now. Let's change it to daily. See what happens.
It was like
it was literally the research.
It was a trend, right, happening, that all these video bloggers, they were starting to put out content every single day, and that's how a lot of their channels like took off. Like, that was amazing. I mean, I love following Gary Vaynerchuk as well. Gary Vee, I know that you follow him as well, and he's all about putting out content and creating instead of what's his quote?
Documenting instead of creating.
Yeah. Which that's something that you've done. You remind me of the Ginger Runner as well. It's just, and
because I've got a ginger beard.
That, and also
it's a color grade that we put on the videos, Hugo. This is the first time you see me in person. You'd be like, you're not ginger.
But it's like this regular person who becomes an influencer by trying things and being 100% real and telling people, you know, I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be the fittest. I don't need to be the fastest to, you know, to keep growing.
How dare you say I'm not the fittest or the fastest, Hugo?
The handsomest. How about
there
that?
Okay. I appreciate that.
But, you know, that's one of the cool things about, and I think that I always think that these days with all this access to all these social media platforms and technology, it's okay to be yourself, in the sense that, you know, imagine 10 years ago, brands wouldn't have called you, you know, to be a spokesperson for them, because there were just different, I don't know, times. There was no access to all the different platforms that, you know, now it's up to you, with, of course, a lot of work and dedication to, you know, build your brand. So, okay, you start making videos and you start getting traction. And you started making the daily videos. Then I don't know, talk a little bit more about how you know, your brand kept growing. One of the things I like to think about digging deep is, like, as an entrepreneur, like, you know, now your brand is growing. Talk a little bit about, you know, I'm sure it's not easy. It's going to be really, really hard. Talk about digging deep as an entrepreneur, building Triathlon Taren.
There's still a lot of doubt right now. It's at a point that I could make a living at it for myself, and it wouldn't be like a having money fights in the kitchen with my wife kind of living, but it would be like I could make a living, and I'd be very happy because I'm doing things in triathlon. But it's not there yet, and I know that if it's just me, it's not as engaging as if I can share that experience and travel with my wife and travel with, like, Melissa, who's essentially my work wife, and she's been a part of basically our family. She originally worked with my wife and was her camera person. and being able to involve her and actually make it something that is bigger than just Taren making a video every single day, that's going to take a lot more work than just me toiling away in my garage making videos. So we're working really hard to make it something that's bigger than that. And that kind of puts us in a position of also opening us up to being vulnerable, because like I'm spending a lot of money that we don't have. We do the social media consulting, and I just take a ton of that money and I put it back into traveling to this event or traveling to Kona. And like we're in the middle of August right now, and I haven't taken a salary from the company all year. Up until like last week was the first paycheck that I took. Last year I took basically just enough to pay some bills, and it's because I'm trying to grow it bigger. And when I see, say, being a former financial advisor, I'm very, very prudent with money, and I keep a really close eye on it. But when you see that bank account that just dwindles down, and in social media where I'm trying to cobble together how to make a living out of it, it's not like consistently this month I made X and next month I made X plus 1,000, and the month after I made X plus 2,000. It's not like that at all. It's like a big lump sum of money, and then it dwindles down. And as that's happening, as the dwindling is happening, it's like, holy smokes. Like I have salaries to pay, I have bills to pay, a credit card bill to pay for this trip. So it leads to doubts. I'll say that just recently we closed a Kickstarter for team training, or like basically a virtual triathlon club that we wanted to build a platform for. And I thought if we knocked it right out of the park, like absolutely as good as it could possibly go, we would raise $15,000. And we ended up raising 42.
Nice.
And to me, that was like, that's heartwarming, because like it's not life-changing money, but it's like a life-changing indication that there are 317 people that believe in what we're doing enough to support it before anything even exists.
Yeah.
Like basically I just turned the camera on one day and I was like, I have an idea.
Yeah.
And I made this big fancy Excel spreadsheet that shows how my idea can work, how this team training platform can work. And you can get like 90% of what a one-on-one coach would give you, but for about 20% of the cost. And there's going to be social media aspects of it, that this virtual team, you can be all around the world and share each other's training and things like that. And I basically just talked about it. And for 317 people to support, even if they're not going to take part in the training platform, but they're willing to support us financially, like it just meant so much to me on so many levels. And again, while we're not out of the woods and we're not having money fights, it's just a big indication of like, all right, I think we're going to be okay. And whether it's this team training platform, or we're here at Rally Sport talking with Aaron Carson about doing a strength training triathlon masterclass, is why I'm here and chatting with Aaron. Whether it's this or that or something else, I think we're going to be okay. Like it's just an indication that like, all right, I feel good about it, but we still have to go and do the work. Like we still got to create this training platform, and I've still got to do it. But it meant a lot to me that many people were willing to support us.
Totally. I mean, you said a key word, indication, and that's the word that I was thinking when you see people that support you to a point where you were able to surpass that goal. Definitely tells you that you're on the right path. And so that's awesome. You reminded me of a podcast that I was listening to. And before I forget, do you any favorite podcast that you're listening to lately?
The Triathlon Taren podcast. It's fantastic, Hugo.
Yeah, please go and sign up.
You set that up. It's really great. Everyone should listen to it. Top ranked,
This
top
is a
rated
sponsor.
triathlon podcast in the world on iTunes.
This is a sponsored message. By the way, congratulations. That's awesome. I saw that.
I could not believe that. It's all due to my wife. She's a former journalist. She interviewed a person every single day for 15 years. She shows up and knits while we're on a podcast, and I'm freaking out.
Well,
like, I have prepared for 2 days, Kim. You're sitting here knitting, and she asks better questions, and basically it's my job to make sure the recorder is going and I don't curse.
It's not easy, man. Like, for instance, right now that we're talking, like, and you know, I don't feel nervous, but when I listen to myself, of course, who likes to do that? But when I first started, this is my 17th podcast, so it's fairly new. But when I first released the first episodes, I would not listen to myself because I'm like, I cannot stand doing that. And then little by little, I forced myself to do it because I realized that I need to improve. And I, deep in my heart, I feel that I can be good at this. I just need to keep working on it because, I don't know, I like talking to people and I enjoy this, this medium, this platform. But it's not easy. Like, when I listen to myself and I listen to the tone of my voice, at least for me, it sounds like I sound a little shy or more shy than I am. And of course, there's so many things that I need to work on, like fillers, and I don't know. I have an issue with silence. So I always like to fill, silence with, and that's one of the things I'm trying to work on. So I listen to, for instance, I like to watch Joe Rogan. I don't watch the whole episodes because those are like 3 long episodes. But Tim Ferriss I like. But the two podcasts that I've been listening to, they're awesome. I don't know if you have listened to. One is called Akimbo from Seth Godin. So I knew who Seth Godin was, but I was never really into him until like lately. And the guy, his podcasts are about not just business, but it just in general, like things, I don't know, different kinds of topics. And they're really short. They're like 20-minute long. And he doesn't do a lot of editing, but the guy's just, I don't like to use the word guru or genius, but the guy is so entertaining and he's so great. And the other one is called Masters of Scale.
Oh, with Reid Hoffman.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I just discovered it maybe 2 months ago, and I can't have enough. I like listen to the podcast again and again, and it's such an amazing production. And not just the production, like the quality of the content. So for our listeners, are not aware of this podcast, basically Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, he talks about how this very successful startups were able to scale up, right? They become successful. So he talks about, companies like Facebook, Uber. My favorite case probably is Airbnb. I've listened to those episodes a lot, but yeah, it's so fun. And I didn't used to listen to podcasts at all. Until I decided to start my own. Well, I'm thinking now, when I was training for, like, doing triathlon, like, my last Ironman was in 2013. Well, last year I DNF Boulder because of a bike crash, but that's a different story. But when I was training for my Ironman in 2013, I used to listen to the Bob Babbitt's podcast. They were pretty cool. And then when I kind of got into trail running, there's a podcast called Ultra Runner Podcast. It's been around for a while, so that was, pretty cool. Anyway, podcast. Do you have any podcasts that you like besides Triathlon Taren's podcast? Number one in the triathlon world.
Let's pull out the Overcast app. Joe Rogan is here. Smart Passive Income.
Pat Flynn, yeah.
I listened to that a lot when I was earlier in my social media career. Don't listen to it so much anymore. Masters of Scale, Hardcore History.
Oh, really?
Have you listened to that?
No.
Dan Carlin?
No.
Holy smokes. Do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
Call in sick. I know you're your own boss, but call in sick and listen to Wrath of the Cons.
Oh, nice.
Oh, it's incredible. I listened to that actually for the first 4 hours of marathon swim that I did last year.
Yeah, 37K.
37K, yeah, and listen to the story of Genghis Khan and the Mongols. Oh my goodness, it's so good. Tim Ferriss and Tower 26, Jerry Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Jerry's fantastic.
Yeah, you just interview him, right?
For the second time. Our first two-time guest.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
His first 15 episodes are phenomenal. They break down how to swim in triathlon so incredibly well. He's a genius. What else do we got here?
Yeah, Pat.
Cal Fussman. Cal Fussman has a new podcast.
Who is he? Because Tim Ferriss talks about him all the time.
He's a really good interviewer. He was one of the editors at large of Esquire magazine for years and years, and then the magazine industry is just in shambles right now. And he went out on his own and has since started this podcast. And he's a really good interviewer. I like him. How I Built This is a good one.
Is that NPR's? Is that an NPR podcast?
That's an NPR.
Okay.
Yeah, How I Built This.
Okay.
With Guy Raz. Freakonomics I like. Rich Roll, of course.
Rich Roll is really cool.
Purple Patch. I've got just a ton here. Purple Patch podcast.
Now,
The Move.
When do you
with Lance Armstrong?
The Move? Is that a newer podcast?
He started that last year for the 2017 Tour de France.
Yeah. Okay, but he has two, right? One where I think he talks about the tour, and then another.
He does The Move, where he talks about stage races or one-day bike races, or he covered a little bit of the Ironman World Championships last year, and then he's got The Forward, which I think is kind of on hold right now.
I see.
That's a traditional interview-style podcast, and I don't know if he's done one of those in 2 or 3 months. But The Move is the one that is really blown up. I think it got up to ranked second in the world in the sports iTunes rankings. Yeah, that's incredible. Because how many interview podcasts are out there? Just tons. Because it's so easy to set up. It's quite the art to do. Not to discredit it. Being a good interviewer is very difficult, as both of us have found out over the last year.
I'm trying to figure out.
We both have to figure it out. And I think that shows in his interview style, and I think he talks about it. But when you get him talking about a bike race, he knows it inside and out.
Okay.
You just turn the mic on to him, and he's like, boom.
Who
else
gonna
is going to talk about it but Lance Armstrong?
Because interesting that you say that, because I've listened to Lance's podcast, The Forward, and it was not engaging. I'll be honest. I was like, are you doing your homework? Interviewing this guest, and I'm like, where's he going with this question? Because, you listen to all these podcasts. I just want to learn. So so you were saying that the other one, The Move, it's definitely, there's more fluid, because, of course, they talk all things cycling. Makes sense.
Oh, it's fantastic.
If I haven't listened to it, so.
Well, it's like Lance Armstrong talks about cycling. Michael Jordan talks about basketball. All of Joe Namath talks about football. If you think about that, who else would you want to hear from that has the most intimate knowledge potentially in the world?
Yeah.
And especially in Lance's case, because he knows it from the amazing side that can come from it and from the worst possible side. And he's seen it all.
Yeah.
So who else there is nobody else in the world that can speak about cycling from the standpoint that he can. And you talk about Seth Godin. He wrote that book, Purple Cow, about being something different. Well, what's Lance's something different? If he starts an interview podcast, he's just another guy interviewing. But if he is starting a cycling podcast and he has that unique outlook on cycling that nobody else in the world has, that's his Purple Cow.
And he has a platform too. He can just say, "Hey, George Hincapie, Georgie,
yeah."
Here," and then, when do you usually listen to podcasts?
All the time.
But when working too?
Less when working.
Yeah.
Less when working. I do it more in the gaps between work. If I take a lot of breaks. I drink a lot of water. I probably take a pee break every half hour, 40 minutes.
I saw your
day.
Your routine version 2018. I like it. I need to make that coffee. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
But I just listen to it constantly in the morning, at night, when I go for a walk.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah. I listen to podcasts when I commute. So I live in Fort Collins. It's like an hour and 15-minute drive from Boulder. It's an easy drive, but that's when I usually
dig deep FOCO now.
Yeah, still Boco roots, but you're right, Foco. But I love it. We've been living there for maybe 4 months, and it's awesome. It's really, really chill.
How far is that from here?
Distance?
Yeah, how far is the drive?
I don't know how many miles, but an hour and 15, probably like 50, 60 miles. It's not.
You drove that far to interview me?
It's not ideal. Yeah, I come here all the time.
Okay, good.
Not only to interview amazing people, but I also work part time at. Have you heard of the Boulder Running Company?
Mm-hmm.
So I work there.
Okay.
Selling shoes is awesome. I love it because people come to us and with all kinds of needs, and so we help them to find the right shoes. And I do that twice a week, just as a gig while I keep building Dig Deep. The drive is not that bad. So
wow, the scenery is nice around here. Holy smokes.
I know. So, all right, man, there's so many questions I could ask, but let's talk about a couple of things I'm really curious. Ironman Kona 2018, do you have any predictions? Any athletes that you think, I don't want to say your favorites, but, who do you think are the big favorite, or, the most, the ones that you think have, really, really strong chances to win?
I think on the women's side, if I said anything but Daniela Reef, I'd be silly.
Well, yeah.
She is unbelievable right now. I think that this is a sleeper. I think my dark horse pick is Mel Hothschild.
Okay.
I did an analysis on this, I want to say 2 weeks ago or so. And if you look at their times, Mel's going to come out of the water about 6 minutes down, but she's probably going to be coming out of the water with Heather Jackson. Heather Jackson basically got to within about 2 minutes of Daniela Reef on the bike last year, but Heather Jackson did it entirely on her own. She didn't have anyone to work with.
Right.
If she can work with Mel Hothschild, who's also an amazing cyclist, Mel Hothschild can work with her. They can probably bike up to Daniela. Nobody's going to be biking with Daniela because they don't want to help her.
Yeah.
She can, for all they care, they're like, bike on your own, Daniela. So I think Mel's going to be working with Heather Jackson to get up to Daniela. It's going to take a lot out of her because Mel will have worked harder on the swim and then hard to get up to Daniela. Okay. But Daniela is she holds run course records all over the place. She is the number one runner in the field the last few years. But Mel Hothschild is like a legitimate Commonwealth Games podium placer in the run. I think just last week she won the state. She still won the state championship running race in Australia, where athletes are amazing. Yeah. And get this, what happened was she gets her workouts from her husband, and she had to do, it was something like a 30K run. And the husband said, all right, so you're going to do a 30K run today. And the last 10 of it is the state running championships. She still won after running 20K before, still wins, gets on the podium. And then the husband says, all right, here's your bike home 200K. So I think that Mel Hothschild in just a straight out running race might be a better runner, but she'll be a little bit more tired after the bike. So, I mean, they might literally be coming off the bike side by side. And if people look at Mel Hothschild's career, she might be one of the greatest triathletes of all time. She's raced 67 pro races and has won 47 of them, has the world record for most course records of any female triathlete, more sub 410 races than any female triathlete. But since she's been in the sport, she always has this wild freak injury that happens right leading into Kona. Like she was getting a massage and somebody slipped and broke her rib. Last year, she got a surgery and she was bleeding out on the table, and the doctor pumped her full of blood, but not full of blood because blood was expensive. So he shorted her like 2 pints, and then she was coming into Kona and feeling like crap. And they went, oh yeah, we didn't fill you up with blood. She's like, well, how am I supposed to race? And they're like, well, blood was expensive. So even though she finished the race last year like 17th, she was doing it on like 80% of her blood volume. So she's an amazing athlete. I think if anyone can take her down, sure, there's Mirinda Carfrae. I don't know if she's quite back yet. Sarah Crowley, I don't know if she's quite on that unbelievable level. Lucy Charles, I think, is probably the future of female Ironman racing, but I don't know if her run is quite there.
Okay.
I don't think she's got the running legs to. Let's put it this way: if you had Lucy Charles and Daniela Reef or Mel Hochschild with 10K to go, you probably pick Lucy last.
Right.
And I don't think she's coming off the bike in front of Daniela with any sort of lead. So I think that's why I don't pick Lucy. But yeah, that's my women's analysis. On the men's side, I think we've seen a Jan this year that we've never seen before. I think he's motivated more than he ever has been. He's got a lot of time to rest up and do well. And I think Jan on Jan's best day is probably one of the best full Ironman racers ever.
Yeah.
And there's lots coming up that I think could probably beat him. Lionel could probably get there. Javier Gomez, I think, could certainly develop into that. But at the moment, I think Jan is probably there. He's hungry, and he has done some amazing times this year. Lionel Sanders is probably my pick.
I was just going to say that.
Tear him apart. He's
Yes.
swimming better than he ever has. Fellow Tower 26 athlete, Lionel and I. And I know the type of effect that Jerry's training has had on him, spending more time with Jerry Rodriguez from Tower 26 and hearing about how Lionel's doing. He's going to be swimming better than he ever has. His bike is Lionel's bike. It's amazing. He's working hard on his handling skills, on being more efficient. So he's probably going to be fresher than he was last year. And then if he can figure out, and I don't know if he has, but he just came out of the Gatorade Endurance Lab. And if Lionel Sanders can figure out that nutritional issue that caused him to stiffen up last year, which I think is largely just an electrolyte imbalance, he, in my mind, would be the only one to do some damage to Jan, because he will have probably done some damage to him on the bike. So while Jan is probably a better runner, he's probably going to be coming off the bike with some smashed up legs, whereas Lionel is not. And if you take a Lionel Sanders, fair, kind of fresh-ish, versus a slightly smashed up Jan Frodeno, I think that kind of equalizes it. And I don't really like, if I have to pick, it's Jan. But
you root for Lionel. I mean, you just want him to win. He's
a Canadian. He's got a mustache.
But not just that. Like, even, for me, like, please, I just want him to, because last year it was just amazing how, he almost did it, and he trains really hard, and he's very inspiring. I don't know. John is just amazing, but he's just a machine. He's a robot. So, super talented, but like Germans are.
Yeah. Those are my picks. Patrick, I
was gonna say
I think Patrick's an extremely talented runner, an extremely talented swimmer, but I don't think he's I will actually say he's an exceptional runner. But I think compared to those two guys in their best race, his best might not be as good as theirs. But I don't know. That kind of sounds stupid, saying that about the guy that holds the course record.
Yeah.
But last year was an exception, because just the way that bike played out and the weather pocket that they ended up in with their bike time and their running time made for a really fast race on that day. Yeah.
Right. Is Tim Don going to Kona this year?
I don't think he was able to qualify. He just raced in Ironman Hamburg, and I believe he needed to place 9th. Yeah. In Hamburg to get enough points and to qualify, and I don't think he did. I think he was like 10th. Yeah. Or I think he was like one spot out.
Yeah. That guy's incredible. Wow. I love the Don.
The Don. He's a solid guy.
Yeah, he's awesome. Taren, thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, Hugo. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Of course. It was so much fun. So people want to find you online for the one or two triathletes. No, I'm just, some of my audience are not, triathletes. So for people, where can they find you online?
Triathlon Taren. That's Taren on all the social medias. It's not hard to get the handle Triathlon Taren, because there aren't a lot of Tarens out there. And a good thing that my mom didn't name me Triathlon Carl. Like nobody would follow Triathlon Carl, but Triathlon Taren, Taren.
Thanks again, Taren.
Thank you.